Secondly, I want to hear him say to these Muslim clerics and leaders, you need to explicitly embrace the same religious freedoms and the same rights for others with different religious beliefs that you want for yourselves. And then finally, I want our Commander-in-Chief to go to the Pentagon and say this. I want to announce that there will be a truce in the war on trans fats. Now, you moms and dads out there, you're going to have to protect your children from Oreos and microwave popcorn, but I trust you can do that. And instead, I want this president to say, I'm going to stop apologizing for America. I'm going to stop criticizing America. I'm going to stop worrying about medieval Christians and the Crusades. Amen. And instead, I want this president to go to the Pentagon and say, take the political handcuffs off. Go to the Pentagon and say to them, give me a plan not just to contain or degrade, but I want a plan to hunt down and kill ISIS and these radical Islamic terrorists abroad before they can come here and commit another Chattanooga or another Garland, Texas. Folks, we're fighting evil. We have to get beyond the political correctness. Now, I know when you say things like what I've just said, people will say, oh, well, that's anti-Muslim, or that's racist. I'm here to say that's nonsense. That's right. We need a commander-in-chief with moral clarity and moral honesty. And I'll tell you this, before I move on, I never want our troops in a fair fight. As commander-in-chief, I'm only going to put our troops in a position where they will dominate any potential conflict. If we send them out, let's send them out to win. And let's give them the support, the resources, and the strategy they need to get the job done. This president told us that he had beaten Al-Qaeda. They said ISIS was a JV team. And then not once but twice they had to come out and say he had no strategy to beat them. And then some poor guy from the White House has to come out and say, well, the president didn't mean what he actually said. That guy's the second busiest guy in Washington, D.C. The busiest guy is the guy that's got the same job for Joe Biden. Can you imagine that? I'll come back and talk more about foreign policy later, but I just wanted to start by talking about, if you want to see some clarity about ISIS and radical Islam, unfortunately you won't get it from our White House. Thank you, Prime Minister Cameron. At least he and others we may not have the last leader in the free world, and our president who won't say these things, who won't be honest with us and the American people. But I didn't come here just to talk about ISIS and radical Islam. I came here, every politician will tell you the next election is the most important election. I bet you in all your visits and all your meetings and all your volunteers, you've never heard anybody come up and tell you, don't worry about the next election. You've probably never had anybody tell you the next city council race, the next governor's race, the next president, just stay home, don't worry. They really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you vote for, they're all the same. Everybody tells you the next one's really important. But this one really is the most important election of our lifetimes. Yep. They've been getting more and more important in recent years. Now, why do I say that? This president, he has done a lot of damage. $18 trillion of debt and counting. Obamacare with bureaucrats between you and your patients. EPA, where they're trying to regulate the water in our backyards and stifle the private sector economy. And you go on down the list. An IRS going after conservative groups for their beliefs. A foreign policy where we won't stand with Israel, and yet we're about to allow Iran to become a nuclear power. And there's a lot of damage he has done that can be undone by getting a conservative in the White House. But I think the most dangerous thing this president is doing is that he's trying to change the definition of America. He is literally trying to redefine the American dream. Now, what do I mean by that? You listen to his policies, you listen to his rhetoric, you watch his policies. It is all about division, redistribution. It's about dividing us against each other. And it's all about more government spending and dependence and taxing and regulating. That's not the American dream. That is the European nightmare. And folks, let's at least give Bernie Sanders some credit. At least the man is honest enough to call himself a socialist. I mean, the reality is, President Obama and his apprentice-in-chief, Hillary Clinton, they're no better. They're just not honest enough to call themselves socialists. That is where they're taking our country. You want to see our future? Our future is Greece. The only difference is there'll be nobody to bail out the United States. We're the last hope for the free world. The EU, they can decide if they want to bail out Greece. There'll be nobody left to bail us out. But that's where we're headed. And I don't know about you, but that is not the American dream that my parents taught me about. I want to tell you briefly about their experience and tell you what we need to do to get that dream back for our children and our grandchildren. You see, my parents, they have lived the American dream. My dad's 1 of 9. The only one that got past the 5th grade in our family, grew up in a house without electricity, without running water. I know because as a young child, I heard these stories every single day. Oh, good luck trying to get an allowance out of a guy like that. By the way, he is that grandfather that is now at home helping take care of the kids. Completely different man. But here's the amazing thing. Over 40 years ago, the first time my parents ever got on a plane, they had never been on a plane. They got on a plane to fly halfway across the world to come to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I tell my kids, they don't understand this. I said there was no Google. There was no online searches. You couldn't look up Louisiana or Baton Rouge. They didn't even know anybody who would visit it and could come back and tell them what it was like. They were coming to an idea as much as they were coming to a specific place. The idea of freedom and opportunity. The idea of the American dream. Now, when they came, and by the way, they came legally when they came to the United States. And I know you're not supposed to say this, but I'll say it anyway. Folks that want to come to our country should come legally.
Yes.
Should learn English.
Yes.
Should adopt our values. And when they get here, they should roll up their sleeves and get to work. It used to be common sense that we'd say, if you want to come here, you should want to be an American. If you don't want to be an American, don't come. Nobody's making people come here. Don't come here. Don't think that you're going to use our freedoms to undermine the freedoms for other people. The reason that's so important, look at what's going on in Europe. You've got 2nd, 3rd generation immigrants that haven't accepted the culture, the values, don't consider themselves part of those countries. We can't let that happen here. We have so proudly called ourselves this great melting pot for so many years. Now the politically correct want to turn us into a salad bowl. That is more political correct nonsense. Look, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of all the divisions. This president's always trying to divide us by geography, by race, by gender, by age, by everything he can think of, by income. You know, we've got to stop with the hyphenated Americans. We are not African Americans. We are not Asian Americans. We're not rich Americans. We're not poor Americans. We're all Americans. We're all united as one. You know, going back to my parents' story, they get to Baton Rouge. My mom goes to school at LSU. My dad, he came here to work. Didn't come for a government program, so he starts calling companies, doesn't know anybody, starts calling companies out of the yellow pages. And I love his persistence. I don't know how long it takes him, but he finally wears down a guy at a railroad company. The guy says, all right, son, you can start Monday morning. And what my dad does next, I know we got some students here, some younger kids here. Don't ever do this on a job interview. This is like one of those things they probably write in how-to guide, one of the top 10 worst things you could do when you're looking for a job. Because I can't believe what my dad tells me. He finally gets a job. I mean, eureka. But this is what he tells his boss before he's even started work. He goes, that's great. He tells his new boss, he hasn't even met the guy yet. Look, I don't have a car. I don't have a driver's license. So he tells his new boss, you're going to have to pick me up on your way to work. And the guy was so taken by his enthusiasm to work, he actually did it. So, but here's the great thing in their story. 6 months later, I was born. I was born at the Women's Hospital, a great little hospital in Baton Rouge. I was what you would politely call a pre-existing condition. Their insurance didn't cover me. But I love what my dad did next. He went to that doctor in that hospital. There were no government forms. There was no paperwork, no contracts, no programs. He simply went to the doctor, and this is what he said. He said, I want to send you a check every month until I pay this bill off in full. And then he shook his hand, and that's exactly what he did. That's just what people did. You know, I asked my dad when I was old enough to understand this. I said, now, how do you pay for a baby on layaway? I'm thinking, if you skip a payment, can they take the baby back? He assured me, he goes, look, you were such a bad little baby. I'll just skip the payment and sent you back if they would have taken it. He goes, no, you're all paid for. Nobody's coming to get you. The reason I tell you that story is my parents came here decades ago. They came here to chase the American dream. They have caught the American dream. They have lived the American dream. I want their grandchildren to have that same opportunity. I want my children, one day my grandchildren to have that opportunity. I want your children, your grandchildren to have that opportunity. Now look, you're going to hear from a lot of candidates running for president. There are a lot of folks running. There are a lot of talkers running. And they'll all make great promises. Folks will come and tell you, we'll cut government. We'll grow the economy. We'll fight for the unborn. And that sounds great. We don't need talkers. We need a doer. We've already got a talker in the White House. If talk was all it took, we'd be doing great. First-term senator, never ran anything, needed on-the-job training. We need somebody with a proven track record. I'm not just talking about doing those things. In my state, we have cut our state budget 26%. We've got 30,000 fewer state government bureaucrats than the day I took office. I don't know that anybody's cut that much government anywhere at any time. As a result, we've had 8 credit upgrades. We, as a result, are a top 10 state for private sector job creation. When I took over, we were coming out of Katrina. People didn't know whether Louisiana was coming back. After 25 years of out-migration, we've had 7 years in a row of in-migration. More people working and living in Louisiana earning a higher income than ever before. $60 billion, 90,000 jobs in private economic development projects coming to this state. But it's not just economics. We've been rated the #1 most pro-life state 6 years in a row since I've been governor. We've won awards from the NRA for the strongest Second Amendment protections in our own state constitution. We fought for statewide school choice so the dollars follow the students instead of the students following the dollars. We privatized our charity hospital system. We passed laws to get rid of Common Core. We're suing the federal government, Arnie Duncan, over the violation of the federal law and the Constitution and trying to push Common Core. Now look, when you do that, there's another side to this story. And I'll tell you what the other side says. You ask them, the left will say this about me. They'll say, look, with Governor Jindal, there's never enough money in government. They're always cutting the state budget. And when they say that, this is what I tell them. Absolutely. Guilty as charged. Because, folks, we have a fundamental decision we've got to make. Do we measure prosperity in the government world or in the real world? It's either or. Hillary Clinton, she wants to grow the government economy, not the real world economy. 7 out of the 10 boom counties were in the greater D.C. area. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not a sustainable economy. That's not the real world. So when you hear candidates come and tell you they're going to take on ISIS, when you hear candidates come and tell you they're going to shrink the federal budget or repeal Obamacare, remember, talk is easy. We don't need another talker in the White House. We need a doer. I'll also tell you this. We need somebody who's going to go and say and do the things you're not allowed to do and say. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to share a little secret with you. You know, a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court came out with a couple of awful rulings. What about you? I was very disappointed in the court. They started the week by, according to Scalia, ignoring the meanings of words. Rewriting a law to save Obamacare, not for the first time, but for the second time. They ended their week by trying to change the definition of marriage. According to the Chief Justice, ignoring the Constitution. I just announced my campaign for president. We actually happened to be here in Iowa when the second ruling came out. My wife and I were one in the machine shed to just shake some hands, visit with folks. So reporters caught up with me and they said, Governor, what do you think about the Supreme Court ruling on marriage? You know, if you put a microphone in front of me, if you ask me a question, I'm likely to tell you exactly what I think, whether you want to hear it or not. So this is what they asked me, and this is what I said. I said, well, look, I just, shot off my mouth. I said, look, so in 1 week, they can't be bothered to read a constitution or a dictionary. In 1 week, the Supreme Court says they're following opinion polls. I said, if that's all they're going to do, why don't we save a couple of bucks? Why don't we just get rid of the entire court? What's the point of having a Supreme Court if that's what they're doing? Now, Hillary Clinton criticized me a couple of days ago for saying that, so I want to revise, this is what they say in D.C., this is that saying, they want to revise and extend their remarks. I'm willing to make a concession. If it's too radical to get rid of the entire court, let's just downsize it. Let's get rid of 2/3 of the court. There are 3 justices I wouldn't mind. I think you know which 3. The other 6, they can go. Yeah. And by the way, there were some Republican and Democrats in there. We can talk more about that. But here's what I want to point out. When the court ruled the way they did on Obamacare and marriage, there were Republicans in D.C. that were secretly happy that they ruled the way they did. And the reason they were happy was they look at marriage as a distraction. And they look at Obamacare and say, we don't want to do the hard work. We don't want to roll up our sleeves and repeal and replace. That's too much work. They want to tell you, oh, that's done. We don't want to fight that anymore. Only in D.C. is losing a good thing. We've got establishment Republicans who don't understand what's at stake here. You know, the reality is, my Christian values teach me that no earthly court can change the definition of marriage. And unlike President Obama and Secretary Clinton, I'm not evolving with the polls. To me, marriage is and always has been and always will be between a man and a woman.
Yes.
That's right.
I'm not a changing or evolving. And that's the easiest thing for any politician to do. You stick your finger in the wind and see which way the opinion polls are going, and you change your views. That's easy. Let's be honest. Everybody knows that's why the president and the secretary changed their views. They were reading opinion polls. I am for federal efforts to give us our 10th Amendment rights back. To remind folks, to reinforce the fact that marriage is between a man and a woman through a constitutional amendment and other means. But make no mistake about it, the left isn't just content to go after our 10th Amendment rights. They are now going after our First Amendment rights. Yep. And now it's just not about redefining marriage. Now it's going against businesses and individuals, and ultimately it'll be churches and pastors and others with a traditional view of marriage. This is not a new conflict. I gave a speech at the Reagan Library over a year and a half ago saying that this assault on religious liberty was coming. Well, it's no longer coming. It is now here. And so you heard Hillary Clinton a few weeks ago say those of us that are pro-life need to have our religious views changed. I don't know about you, but my religious beliefs aren't between me and Hillary Clinton. I'm not changing them because she doesn't like them. My religious views are between me and God Almighty. But it's not just Hillary Clinton. The left is now going after florists, caterers, musicians, and others. We passed not only a Religious Freedom Restoration Act in my state, my first term, I issued an executive order in May saying the state will not discriminate against individuals or businesses that have a traditional view of marriage. The ACLU sued us. Now, here's the amazing thing. The ACLU, they were for religious liberty before they were against religious liberty. They used Louisiana's RFRA to help protect religious minorities in our state, and I'm glad they did. But when Christians were the ones being discriminated against or persecuted, then they showed their hypocrisy. Make no mistake about it, the left is trying to take God out of the public square. They're trying to redefine America into an extent the Founding Fathers wouldn't recognize it. Our own parents wouldn't recognize it. That's not an America I want my children to be able to recognize. The reality is this is not a new conflict. The Founding Fathers anticipated this. That is why they put the First Amendment in the Constitution. That's why they put religious freedom in the First Amendment. Now, when Hillary and the President say that you have the right to religious freedom, all they mean is, oh, for a couple of hours a week you can say what you want in church. That's not religious freedom. Religious freedom is being able to live your life 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, according to your conscience, according to your faith, according to your beliefs. I'll say this slowly so that even Hillary Clinton can understand it. The United States of America did not create religious liberty. Religious liberty created the United States of America. It's the reason a radical idea. This is a really different idea for Republicans. In 2016, why don't we try something different? Why don't we embrace our own principles for a change?
Yeah.
A nice change for one that's conservative. And what do I mean by that? Well, Jeb says this. He says we got to be willing to lose the primary in order to win the general election. I disagree with that. Let me translate that to plain speak English for you. When the establishment says that, that's a fancy way of saying this. Hey, you conservatives, you need to hide your beliefs. You got to get the left and the media to like us. Well, I'm here to tell you, folks, if we do that again, we will lose again, and we will deserve to lose again.
That's right.
Yeah.
This election is not about the Republican Party. It is not even about the state of Iowa or the state of Louisiana. It is about the United States of America. We don't need a second liberal party. We don't need to become a cheaper version of the Democratic Party. We need to stand on our principles and show the American people there is an alternative. I'm here to tell you, as your next commander-in-chief, we will get 4 things done. First, we will repeal and replace every single part of Obamacare, and I'm the only candidate that's going to do that. Secondly, we'll stop talking about it. We won't pass a comprehensive plan. We won't grant amnesty. But we need to once and for all secure our border and get rid of the eventual. Not take a 1,000-page bill. The only use for a 1,000-page bill is to stack it up against the wall. That'd be the only reason to have a 1,000-page bill.
Why hasn't it already been secured?
Because we got a president who doesn't want to do it. It's absolutely, look, he's got a pen and a phone. If he wants to get it done, he can get it done right now. Third, we need to shrink the size of our federal government and grow our private sector economy. And then fourth and finally, we've got to reinvest in our military so that our friends trust us, our enemies fear us. We need to stand with Israel. We need to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power. I'll close with this. I'm not asking folks simply to join a campaign. I'm asking you to join a cause. I'm asking you to believe again. You know, as a child, my dad taught me that Americans can do anything. I believed him then, and I believe him now. And I think you believe that too. I think in our hearts we all believe in America, and we want to believe again, but we've been frustrated these last 7 years. I think our best days are ahead of us, not behind us. I think we can dominate this century, but I don't think it's inevitable. Previous generations have spent great blood and treasure to give us the opportunities we have had. Now is our time and turn to choose. President Reagan reminded us when we were similarly discouraged that we were a shining city on a hill. But he also reminded us it wasn't inevitable. He said every generation had to choose for themselves to renew those principles for freedom. This is our time. You know, Churchill would always say about the American people, you can count on the Americans to do the right thing after they've exhausted every alternative. Well, after 7 years under President Obama, folks, we have exhausted every alternative. Our founding fathers got this so right. They knew the genius, the brilliance of America wasn't in our government, wasn't in our buildings or our monuments. It was in freedom. They knew government didn't create our rights. They created a limited government to secure our God-given rights. It was in the freedom of entrepreneurs to create something from nothing. It was in the freedom of moms and dads to raise their children and their families according to their values. That is what has made America great. Our best days are still yet to come. But we have to fight to take our country back. 4 more years of these policies, we'll have a generation of Americans that won't even remember the America we're trying to restore. All they'll know about America is what they read about in the history books. We must not, we cannot, we will not let that happen. I'm asking you to join a cause. I'm asking you to believe again. Go to bobbyjindal.com. Learn more. Join us. Let's fight. Let's get our country back. Let's restore the American dream for our children and grandchildren. God bless you. Thank y'all very much. Now I want to hear from y'all. We want to take y'all's questions on anything and everything, and we'll take as many as we can, and afterwards we'll visit folks. Yes, sir.
IRS. Can you talk about the IRS?
Absolutely. So a couple of things. We all saw this scandal. The IRS went after conservative groups for their beliefs. And here's my first question about this. So who lost their jobs? Who lost their benefits? Who went to jail? How come after scandal, they have a bunch of headlines, a bunch of speeches, and nothing really changes? Let me ask you something. Next April 15th, what if you went to the IRS and said, you know, I had all my receipts, I had all my paperwork, and the computer just dated it. I don't know what happened. Well, good. I wouldn't try that, by the way. I wouldn't suggest it. The excuses they give us wouldn't work if we gave them back to them. But the reality is this. It's not enough just to fire. It would do some good to fire and maybe arrest and get rid of some bureaucrats. If that happened a couple of times, maybe we wouldn't keep having all these scandals. But we've got to take power away from the IRS. As long as they have too much discretion, they will continue to abuse that discretion. That's why I think we need a lower, flatter tax code. I think it would promote economic growth. It would take power out of D.C. That requires two things. It requires both parties to give up some of their carve-outs, their special treatments. Both parties are guilty of that. Both parties listen to lobbyists and go there, and both parties love to criticize each other. They'll say, on our side, we rightfully say we don't like Solyndra, we don't like the deals that the left does. And that's right. But the Republicans in D.C. do their own carve-outs and special treatments. The last time we had really successful comprehensive tax reform was in the 80s under President Reagan. And it was bipartisan because both parties understood we both have to give up our carve-outs and our special treatments, and then we can get lower and flatter rates. That's fair, and it promotes economic growth. Until we really fundamentally do that, I worry as long as there's great discretion in the hands of the IRS, they're going to come after folks. Think about this. So during the Supreme Court case, when they were hearing questions and arguments about the marriage case, I think it was Alito who asked the Solicitor General, if we rule the way you want, could this impact the not-for-profit, the tax status of some of these religious institutions like the colleges, the higher ed institutions? Solicitor General said it could maybe. Didn't say no. So now think about that. In the hands of an IRS, what they might do, what kind of mischief they might cause. Going after schools or other religious affiliated groups. So you've got a lower, flatter tax code. Take that power out of D.C. Don't believe anybody that tells you, we'll just get a better group of bureaucrats. And that includes the EPA and the Federal Department of Education. Look at the Federal Department of Education. If they blackmail states with their own money, or if they want waivers from No Child Left Behind to try to force them to do Common Core. Well, the way to stop that is take the power away. It was Republicans that helped pass No Child Left Behind. Why in the world do we give that power to the federal government? We got to learn this. We got to learn this lesson once and for all. Too many times Republicans think, if there are Republicans in charge, it's okay to give that power to the federal government. I don't want to have that power whoever's in charge. Republicans or Democrats. Yes, sir.
What can we do right now about the Iran protocol that's been passed by our president and
the
executive branch?
Yeah, and the UN. So he goes to the UN before he goes to the Congress. Yeah. Well, a couple of things we can do right now. That's a great question. Because I've already said as Commander-in-Chief, I wouldn't feel bound by a bad deal, especially since he's not treating it as a treaty. He's not trying to get a two-thirds vote. Right now, we need to tell our elected leaders in the House and the Senate, it is time for them to be Americans first. Not Democrats, not Republicans. So this White House is putting tremendous pressure on a lot of Democrats, especially to say, hey, you need to stick with the White House. You need to say, well, you can't vote against this. Look, the president's already said he's going to veto it, but the first step is to get 60 votes in the Senate, a majority in the House to reject this bad deal. Assume he vetoes it. Well, then it's going to be a two-thirds vote to override. But you know what? Congress has got more power than they think. There are all these vehicles they send to the president. The reality is this is one of those clear moments of deciding. Are we going to stand with Israel? Are we going to stop this existential threat? I don't think Congress should have ever passed a bill, by the way, that flipped it. Because when you think about it, we're going from a scenario where they need a two-thirds vote of approval to now you need a two-thirds vote to disapprove it. Right. But in the very short term, what we need to be doing right now is getting Congress, House and Senate members, Democrats and Republicans, to commit they're going to stand for America's national security. At the very least, don't tell the president, look, why don't we at least get the deal you said you were going to get? You said you were going to get anytime, anywhere inspections. Now John Kerry says, they never were trying for that. Look, he's either lying or incompetent if they never raised this issue. Yeah, that's true. Well, remember what Secretary Clinton said, what difference does it make?
Tell that to the dead people.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah. That's right. And Benghazi, can you believe she said that when they were asking about, but that's a whole other thing. But going back to that Iran deal for a second, so you got 4 prisoners, no mention of getting them out. They're not even making Iran recognize Israel. Not making them cut off their ties to Hamas or Hezbollah. This is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. And they're going to have to cut those ties off. Not allowing anytime, anywhere inspections. Not giving up. They're getting to keep over 5,000 centrifuges. The president said they were going to lose all their enrichment capacity. They're not, look, a real deal would have cut off the pathway to a plutonium device, would have said that they've got to do all the things I just said, and then and only then would we gradually lift sanctions after they've completed, after we verified they've done all those things. Instead, now they get a heads up. There's not anytime, anywhere inspections. They're going to get a sudden infusion of cash. All you need to know about this deal is that Israel, when it was announced, Israel and Netanyahu didn't like it. Assad and Syria praised it. So our friends don't like it, our enemies love it. This is what I really worry. this president could be starting a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Because the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Turks, they're not going to stand idly by. And they may already have an opportunity to buy this from Pakistan. There are reports that the Saudis helped finance the Pakistani device. So now think about how dangerous that could be with multiple countries potentially with nuclear capabilities in the Middle East. I suspect he's trying to do this, God bless you, simply because he's trying to live up to his Nobel Peace Prize and his legacy. I wish he would just give the prize back. It'd be better for our country and better for world peace. One final thing on this whole Iran deal, this whole thing of snap-back sanctions, we are fooling ourselves. We think these European countries, after they start making money, and especially Russia and others, they start making money off Iran, we're fooling ourselves. We think they're going to automatically just come back. Look, there's a reason America's always had to have Israel's back at the UN and the international community. These other countries, if they're forced to try to cut off lucrative commercial ties, I don't have any confidence. This president talks about snapback sanctions as if it's just going to happen automatically. I don't have any confidence that's going to happen. This is a very bad deal. It's one of the worst legacies of this president, which is why I signed on the Cotton letter. And I'm proud that Senator Cotton didn't vote for this bill, the corporate bill in the Senate. And I think that they need to do everything they can to scrap this bad deal. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you faced, I assume, some opposition in Louisiana to accomplish what you did?
Oh, yeah, just a little.
I'd like to hear how you worked with everybody and got it accomplished.
Well, that's a great question. So, a couple of things. Louisiana, just a little bit of way background. Louisiana, historically, has been a state where Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. When I was first elected, we had never had a majority in the House or the Senate. 7 out of the 7 statewide, only 1 was Republican. Now all 7 are Republican, and the House and Senate have Republican majorities for the first time. But that doesn't mean that people supported everything we did. I'll give you a couple of examples. When we did statewide school choice, for example, there was a lot of opposition. Teacher unions marched. They tried to recall me. They tried to recall the Speaker of the House. It got so bad, whenever we'd see a march or protest, I tell my kids, that's a parade for daddy. That's what they told me. I'd have to drive by real fast and go read what it says on the road. At one point, we had superintendents giving teachers paydays off. They'd go to the Capitol to protest me and my reforms. And so my little girl had figured this out. So one night, she stayed up late saying, Daddy, so if my teacher had protested against you, I wouldn't have to go to school tomorrow, right? I was like, that's a heck of a thing. My daughter lobbying the other side. I said, you're not lobbying against my reform. So there was opposition. And there's opposition when you cut government. My first year, remember I had a Democratic House and Senate. We got a largest income tax cut done. We got school choice done in New Orleans. Got a lot of things done. I had a line item veto more than any other governor before me across several years put together. And basically, they were testing me. Basically, they were saying, all right, is he going to really do what he said? The best compliment I ever got was from a Democratic senator my first term. He was complaining to her. Now, he was complaining. This wasn't a compliment to him, but it was to me. He was complaining to a reporter. He goes, well, that governor, he's just stubborn as a mule when it comes to taxes. He just won't raise them for anything. He was complaining. We keep cutting government because he won't raise any taxes. And I remember calling him up and saying, look, I want to put that in my campaign literature. I really appreciate it. Because he thought it was an insult. There are a couple of things we did. Look, I won with big margins both times. First election was the first time we'd ever elected a non-incumbent in the primary. The second time, we called them parishes, not counties. Every single parish with a record majority. But then we used our political capital. It's not hard to be a popular governor or a popular politician. You kiss babies, you cut ribbons, you don't rock the boat. That's the easy way to stay elected. And you can do that as long as you want. But that's not what I promised the people of Louisiana. I said, we're going to make big changes. We started with the toughest overhaul of our ethics laws that had ever been done. Went from the bottom of the list to the top of the good list. And we went on from there. And then I went to every single parish, again, equivalent counties, every year so I could face the voters. In my first term and much of my second term, we'd go to every county, oftentimes multiple times. And I remember that first year, when you do all that cutting, it sounds great. But then you got to go face people who line up. And they basically said, well, now tell me why you cut this project that I like. I remember I went to one local parish and there was a guy really upset with me. His wife had worked for one of these projects and she wanted to know why did I cut all that funding. But he did respect, he didn't agree with me, but he respected the fact that I looked him in the face and explained to him, I think this is what explains why we've been able to get the reforms done that we wanted. We told people up front, if you elect me, we're going to make big changes. But it's really about bringing our children and grandchildren back. You see, for 25 years, Louisiana was the only state that exported our kids. We're the only state in the South, anyway, that more people were leaving rather than coming into the state. What that means is you don't get to see your grandchildren grow up. You don't get to see them play baseball or go to school. You see them at Christmas once or twice a year. And the way my mom puts it, she's like a lot of moms in Baton Rouge and Louisiana. She goes, look, son, I love you. But if we had figured out a way to have those grandchildren first. She said, well, you wouldn't be here today. I'll be honest. And so we told people, and I had a lot of folks in my state that said, look, I don't agree with everything you've done. Maybe you're too conservative. Maybe you've cut too much. Maybe I don't agree with this. But they said, you know what? You've done what you said you were going to do. You brought our kids back. And you've focused on economic development. I think as a national level, two things we've got to do. We've got to explain why we think our policies are better for everybody. If we really believe that, we need to fight for 100% of the votes. And be out there boldly saying, growth is better than government dependence. We shouldn't be celebrating record numbers on food stamps and record low participation rate in the workforce. That's the wrong thing to be celebrating. And the second thing we need to be willing to do is upset the apple cart, whether it's in our own party or not. We got to take on incumbent Republicans to get school choice done. Here's one of the problems we got in D.C. I'll give you an example of the success and an example of the challenge. So here's the success. Reagan, with the Democratic Congress, wins the Cold War. He basically is able to invest in the military, cut taxes, deregulate a big part of the economy. How did he do it? Well, he went around Congress to the American people and explained to them in easy-to-understand terms, this is what the fight's about. And the one thing politicians in D.C. understand is self-survival, self-preservation. They don't want to lose their jobs and their perks and their offices. And he mobilized that, so Democrats were all of a sudden voting for things like tax cuts and arming the military and things they had opposed before. That was the example of how you can do it. You stand on principle and you work with the American people. But here's the challenge we face today. And it's tougher today. We got a permanent governing class in D.C. And it's in both parties. You get politicians that go up there and they never leave. And then they go become these lobbyists, make 6, 7 figures. Founding fathers intended our legislators, our elected leaders, to be part-time, to be temporary. It's supposed to be a sacrifice, not a lifestyle. You're supposed to leave your farm, your factory, your job, your family, go there, serve, and then come back home and live under the same rules and regulations you passed for the rest of us. They all thought Obamacare was great. And then when folks said, well, why do you have an exemption? All of a sudden they started squealing. They didn't like it when people started talking about that. If they had to live under the same rules and regulations they passed for the rest of us, maybe the economy wouldn't be growing at 2% or shrinking the first quarter. Maybe we wouldn't have these crazy EPA rules and regulations. So I think that we can get that change done in D.C., but we need term limits. And we need a part-time Congress. We need a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution, supermajority vote before they raise our taxes, supermajority vote before they grow government faster than the economy. And I say part-time Congress. You know, we pay our legislators a per diem. I'd like to pay Congress a per diem, but pay them for every day they stay outside of D.C. rather than get paid for every day they go to D.C. So we've got to ban them from becoming lobbyists. That can't become a permanent way of life. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, thank you for taking my question. Do you agree or disagree with the FCC's attempt to classify broadband internet service as a public utility, thus putting it under government control?
I disagree, absolutely. Look, for those that aren't familiar with this, so the FCC is trying to take outdated, decades-old telephone rules and apply it to the internet. One of the reasons the internet's been so successful is that it's been open, it's been competition, it's been bottom-up, not heavy-handed government regulations top-down. This is what I worry about. In addition to all the inefficiencies, this could be yet another backdoor attempt. And look, you've seen all the scandals with this administration. Ultimately, this could get to the government trying to pick winners and losers when it comes to what you're able to see on the internet. Now think about that. And I would look, if you told me that several years ago, I would have said, oh, that wouldn't happen in America. But then again, I didn't think the Department of Justice would get guns to a Mexican drug cartel and fast and furious. I didn't think the DOJ would sue me over statewide school choice. I didn't think that you'd have the IRS going after groups for their political beliefs. I didn't think that you'd have the Benghazi scandal. They blame it on YouTube video. There were a lot of things I didn't think would happen. So I'm absolutely opposed for a lot of reasons. I think that one of the reasons it's worked again has been the freedom and the competition and the choice. We don't need to screw that up with a heavy-handed role of government and over-regulation. Again, let's worry about what they were doing if they're trying to pick winners and losers when it comes to content consumption. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think of eliminating lobbyists?
Well, look, you can't eliminate them because there are free speech rights. But I do think what we can do is, because, look, the simple definition of a lobbyist is somebody who's going there and trying to convince Congress to do what they want. So you can't stop people. We have a right to petition our government. And that's a good thing. Where I think where it's gotten out of hand is where the special interests have too much influence because you've got lifelong politicians. And they're all worried more. I'll tell you a quick story about when I was there for 2 terms. I was like to say I was sentenced to 2 terms. That's what it felt like when I was in Congress. I'll tell you 3 things you're given real quickly. So when you get elected, first you get a license plate. And in the House, I was in the House, it says H and a number. Now, if you're number 1, that means you're the most senior person there. Now, there are 435 House members, so if you get 435, you know where you rank. Well, I'll let you know, I was always in the 400s. I never left the 400 my 2 terms. Well, I remember one day, my office was in the Longworth building. One day I had a very early meeting in Rayburn. And I was driving around the block trying to park, and I couldn't find a parking. It was very, very early. There were no cars out there, but everything is painted. You know, reserved, no parking, whatever. And so I'm driving around, but anybody that's trying to park in D.C., you know, it can be frustrating. And especially in Louisiana, we don't do a lot of parallel parking. So, I mean, you know, there's a lot of parking around there. So we're sitting there driving around looking for a parking spot. And finally, this Capitol policeman comes out, and I guess he thinks, no, I'm going to take pity on this. But he was like, what is wrong with you? Like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I can't find any parking. And you can tell what he's thinking. He's too polite to say. He's like, idiot. And he goes, well, with that license plate, you can park wherever you want. Those signs aren't for you. I never tried this, but I imagine if you try to park your car on the Capitol lawn, they probably never tow it as long as you have one of those license plates. I never tried that. So the first thing you learn is that license plate means you get to park on the hill with pretty much, you know, without anybody ever bothering you. The second thing you get a little pin that only members get. And they change it every new Congress. So even old members, you can't, I mean, every 2 years there's a new pin. And that means that you get to go to all those secret passages that only you can go in. And not only that, you don't have to wait in line at the metal detectors. So everybody else, you see in D.C. on the Hill, everybody's waiting, they're getting wanded, they're getting scanned, they're putting their bags or purses. You don't have to do that. You get to walk to the front of the line and walk right around because you're wearing that pin. The third thing you get is a voting card. And that's the most important thing. That voting card, it's about the size of a credit card, only you're allowed to use it. And what that means is that you can't give your staff or anybody else, that's what everybody wants. So every lobbyist, everybody that's coming to see you wants you to vote the way that they want you to vote. And I want you to think about something. If all of a sudden you're given a pot of money, you're allowed to hire and fire your staff. There's no civil service protection, basically, and you've got huge discretion in setting their salary. Well, guess what happens? All day long, I tell people, when you get elected to Congress, it's the most amazing thing. Your jokes get funnier. You get smarter. You're better looking. It's just amazing the transformation you get to Congress. And you never realized how great you were, because I remember there was a guy that had endorsed one of my opponents, a local politician, gone on TV and criticized me and been very, very harsh on me. When we won, I remember him coming to me and saying, Bobby, I was secretly for you. I was new to politics. I said, I don't even know what that means. I said, I want you to be secretly for the other guy and work for me next time. Don't put out my yard signs. I don't care about the secret stuff. But the reason I tell you that is they live in a bubble. And they listen to these special interest groups, these lobbyists. And I used to tell members, nobody would ever do this. I'd say, try something. Make up the dumbest story that you could, make up the dumbest thing you could ever think of. And tell it to a group of people and see if they would disagree with you. You know, tell them the sun rose in the west or something crazy. And my experience is when you do that 9 out of 10 times people out there try to find a way to agree. No matter how stupid it is, they'd be like, you know, I thought the sun looked funny today. It didn't feel right when I was driving home. Nobody will tell the emperor they've got no clothes. And so I think the way you break up that influence is you've got to stop. Term limits stop this whole idea that you've got to go along to get along. Because new members are told pretty early on, look, if you misbehave, you'll never get on the right committee. You'll never be chair. You'll never get this perk or this office or this parking spot. I can't tell you how many times I just remember coming back to my office thinking, I'm sure we're going to lose. I'm sure we're going to be kicked out of the hill, you know, any minute now based on what we've just done or said. But then the second thing is if they're constantly thinking in terms of, well, I might be a lobbyist one day, and so I'm going to go work for these guys one day. We've got to stop that revolving door so that they're more interested in representing us. If they really have to go work in the private sector, and they come up with all fancy talk, like I'm not a lobbyist, I'm just a government consultant. We're smart enough to see through that. If they have to come back here and work under the rules that they thought were good enough for us, I think that would really change behavior. So I think you're right. We've got to decrease the influence of the special interest, and part of it is changing their mindset. They've got a choice. They either serve us or themselves, but they can't do both, and I want them to serve us if they're running for office. Yes, sir.
Governor, I really like what I'm hearing coming out of your mouth. Reducing the size of government is very important. You're going to have the opportunity to fire a lot of people in Washington. That's great. Who are you going to go and look for to replace what you want.
That's a great question. So think about, let's talk about who presidents appoint in their agencies, and then let's talk about Supreme Court, because I talked about that, I hinted at that earlier, because I think that's a huge, this next president could appoint anywhere between 1 to 3 or 4 justices, maybe the most important legacy this next president could do. Let's look at agency heads first. A lot of Republican presidents make the mistake of they appoint people with impressive resumes or backgrounds, and they think, well, this guy's a really good manager, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or this woman, got this great resume, and people are going to, be hard to vote against them. And that sounds good. There's nothing wrong with it, but here's the problem. I've seen it happen too many times where a cabinet agency goes to a head of a department, and instead of bringing the president's philosophy of limited government and shrinking the agencies, as soon as they get there, they go native. Because they're outnumbered and surrounded by bureaucrats. They're going to be there long after they're gone. I mean, the bureaucrats' attitude is, you're only here a few years. I've been here for decades. I'm going to be here long after you're, gone back wherever you're from. And what happens is they start going to the OMB and the White House. Instead of bringing the White House's principles to those agencies, they bring the agency's agenda to the White House. And they show up at cabinet meetings or OMB meetings lobbying for more money and more power and turf, saying, I need my agency to be bigger because that gives me power and prestige. You think about it, it's a rare individual who goes there and says, it's my job to work myself out of the job. I mean, how many people have the guts to go do that? And say, I want to try to decrease the size and the importance of my position. It's human nature to say, no, this is important. I've got power. And so I think you want somebody who shares that philosophy, is committed to that philosophy. There was a saying when I was at McKinsey, if you buy an $800 hammer, then everything starts to look like a nail. What that means is when a lot of companies, when you spend a lot of money on a certain, machine or device or whatever, you're going to want to use it. You want to justify it. And so one of the most important criteria when you're selecting agency heads or senior executives is, do they have the discipline? Do they have the ideology? Do they have the philosophy, the willpower? Do they have the vision to actually know they're there to shrink the size of government? And they better have a sense of urgency. I tell my cabinet, I tell my appointees, we're going to run out of time before we run out of things to do. And I tell them all this. In my state, one of the first things, our most important priority was trying to bring our kids back. I told every agency head, one of your top goals was economic development. Now that sounds like a strange thing. People in other agencies are just like, well, I don't deal with jobs. I said, yes, you do. You pass regulations. You spend taxpayer money. Everything you do can either make this a better or a worse place for businesses who want to come here and jobs that want to be created here. So that's why, in terms of that person, in terms of the court. Now, here's what frustrates me. There's not a person in this room that was worried or wondering how the Democratic appointed justices were going to vote in those cases. We all knew how I don't remember my lifetime. Maybe it happened when I was younger. I don't remember. I don't remember ever a Democratic appointed justice waking up one day and saying, you know what, I'm actually a conservative. I've evolved. I have grown in the office. I've decided, I've realized I'm going to apply the Constitution. It's always the other way around. It was Roberts and Kennedy. If they hadn't flipped, we wouldn't have gotten those rulings on Obamacare and marriage. And before them, it was Souter. So why does that happen? I have a theory about this. So Democratic presidents proudly appoint judicial activists. And then a bunch of Senate Republicans feel obligated to confirm them. I said, well, look, they're reasonable people. They went to good schools. They're walk upright. It's not my job. The president won the election. I'm going to vote for their nomination. That's not what Republican presidents do. When Republican presidents appoint justices, we try to find people that have no record whatsoever. We try to find judges that have never written anything controversial, never made a ruling, never given a speech, never told anybody what they thought or believed. And then we pretend. Like, well, I really don't know what he thinks or believes. We'll just have to appoint him and confirm him and find out. And if you try to appoint somebody that's a known conservative, somebody who's in the Federalist Society, somebody who says, I'm going to apply the Constitution, not international law or opinion polls or make it up, then the Senate Democrats say, oh, we're not going to confirm that person. Look, I want an Alito. I want a Thomas. I want a Scalia. And I want a president, and as your next president, what I will do is say to those senators, we are going to appoint a conservative, unapologetically. I'm not looking for the, I keep saying this, I need to stop saying this because this is disrespectful. I'm not looking for the Immaculate Conception. I'm not looking for some justice who has no, would you really trust a lawyer who spent decades and never told anybody what he thought or believed? Not no guys are getting paid by the word and by the minute. These guys have every incentive to keep writing down and saying what they think. I would unapologetically appoint conservatives who will apply the Constitution. The other side does it for their beliefs. Why don't we do it for ours? Yes, sir.
He has a question.
Governor, I was at the Family Leader Summit on Saturday, and you brought a lot of energy to the stage. And frankly, I think you hit it out of the park.
Thank you.
My question, and I heard you say this earlier, is that Louisiana is ranked very high as a pro-life state. Tell me about, and it's really been in the news a lot this week about Planned Parenthood and them being exposed for what they really are,
Sure.
and that's an agency that kills babies. What are you doing in Louisiana regarding Planned Parenthood funding, and if you do fund Planned Parenthood, what's your plan
Sure.
from this point on?
That's a great question. And first of all, those of you that didn't see, there was a second video that was released, and it's as horrific as the first.
Yep.
And the first one showed, people eating salads and drinking, this woman eating her salad and drinking her wine and talking about unborn children and their organs. And the second video is not, I saw an excerpt on the news today. I didn't go online to see the full one. I saw the excerpt on the news today, and it's not any better. I would encourage folks to go over there and see that story. Well, a couple of things about the video. We'll talk about the funding and what we're doing in Louisiana. So, a couple of things about this video. There's been a lot of discussion about whether they broke the law, about the sale of human organs and human trafficking, the sale of fetal organs. And that certainly needs to be looked into. But above and beyond the allegations of them breaking the law, the curtain was pulled back. And what we saw was just barbaric. It was horrific. There's no other way to describe it. I mean, there's no reason to try to dance around light about it. My hope is that even folks that aren't yet pro-life, that's how I like to describe folks. Not, they're not pro-choice. They're just not yet pro-life. My hope is that even some of those folks would be shocked by this and would look at this video and hear these remarks and say, wait a minute, I need to rethink my position on this. It showed how much we've got to work to create a culture that values innocent human life. And so in Louisiana, Planned Parenthood doesn't do any abortions, but they would like to. So up till now, they have not done any in Louisiana. They want to build a large facility in New Orleans. We did two things the Tuesday the first video came out. One, we started an investigation. And no, they don't have any state dollars or contracts. We started an investigation. I do think they're a federal Medicaid provider, but there's no state contract. And by the way, I absolutely think Congress right away needs to cut all federal funding for Planned Parenthood. There's no reason. I hope Democrats would vote for that. I would hope they would have the conscience. And by the way, where are the Democrats on this? And where's the media? Why are they asking every Democrat running for president? They love asking Republicans questions. I'm happy to answer them, but why aren't they asking the Democrats running for president? What does Hillary Clinton think about Planned Parenthood?
She won't answer.
No, she has that rope line, so you can't get close to that. That's right. Yeah, but it does make, that's right, but it does make a difference.
So if you want higher taxes, you want to be pro-life.
So we got to get rid of their funding. We got to get rid of if you want more taxpayers, that's right. Not higher taxes, more taxpayers. We got to get rid of their funding. But we also launched an investigation that day. And we launched an investigation. We've asked the FBI for help. Haven't got a response from them. I talked to the governor of Texas. He has also launched an investigation. I said, let's share. And the attorney general in Texas is also helping to lead that. I said, let's share what we find out. Because they do provide abortions in Texas. And they don't in Louisiana. They've got designs. They want to build a large facility in New Orleans. I've told them, we're not issuing any permits. We're not allowing them to move forward. Instead, we're doing this investigation. So we're not allowing them to move forward in New Orleans, in Louisiana. Again, I hope this is a turning moment. Many of us have prayed for a culture of life in our country that accepts every innocent human life, unborn, the elderly, the disabled, every human life. And I do hope this shocks the conscience. I mean, it's hard for me to watch. I'll be honest with you. It's not something that's pleasant. It's not something we would like to talk about or even think about. I mean, it is some of the most graphic videos, but it also opens people's eyes to what's really going on. So we issued that order last year, whenever the first video came out, in terms of not letting them have permits and launching that investigation. And I hope that, I do hope Congress will cut off their funding. There's no reason for them to get all the money they continue to get from taxpayers.
Governor, we have time for one more.
Yes, ma'am.
What is your conservative market solution to climate change?
Well, so the question was about climate change. A couple of things. People ask, I do think that human behavior, if people ask me, does human behavior impact the climate? I'm sure it does. Now, how much it does, the consequences, I'll leave to the experts and the scientists. But I will say this when it comes to policy. I'd say two things. One, I think you can have a strong economy. I think you can have affordable energy, and I think you can protect the environment. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. The problem I've got is this president seems to think you can't do all three. He wants energy to be expensive. He wants it to be scarce and expensive so the government has more influence over our lives. For example, in energy policy, I'm for an all-of-the-above approach. I come from a state that makes a lot of oil and gas, but we also build components for the nuclear industry, and we've also got a company that does some work for the wind industry. We've got one of the nation's first biodiesel refineries. We're also heavily involved in the renewable fuels and the biofuels. I'm an all-of-the-above guy. And I think that's good for our economy, good for our national security. I'm for the Keystone Pipeline. I'm for all of it. I think it's good for our economy. It's good for our My concern is this president has gone to China and negotiated a deal where we have to hurt our economy in the short term. They don't have to do anything until the long term, and that's not even enforceable. And let me give you a specific example of why I think that's dangerous for our economy. So Nucor wants to build a big steel mill in my state back in my first term. Ultimately, 5 phases, $3.2 billion investment, 1,250 permanent jobs. Average pay $75,000 a year before benefits. Now, these are good paying jobs, 4,800 indirect jobs. Most of these jobs don't require a college degree. These are jobs you can raise a family on. These are good paying jobs. So we convinced them that they should build in Louisiana. They were looking at a bunch of places. We convinced them, spent a lot of time with them, went to their headquarters, actually went to one of their plants, met with their CEO, and then the election happened in 2008. And they got worried about what the EPA might do. So Nucor told us, well, wait a minute, we're not sure we're going to build this project in America. We're thinking instead about going to Brazil. Now, whatever your beliefs are about climate, how in the world does it help the environment for that steel mill to move that facility from America to Brazil? I would reckon our laws are tougher than theirs. So it's actually worse for the environment. It's certainly worse for the economy. That's 1,250 jobs, 6,000 total that are going somewhere else. It took us a couple of years. We worked with them. We finally convinced them they could still build in America. We worked with them and helped them against the EPA, and they did. They've already completed the first phase. Now they're looking at timing on the future phases. So my point is, if we're going to take any actions, it needs to be in concert with the countries we trade with, the countries we compete with. This idea that we're going to allow China, they've added more incremental coal capacity than our entire coal sector in recent years. All of the growth in emissions is actually coming from the developing world, not the more advanced countries. So if we're going to do anything, we've got to do it in concert with these other countries. Otherwise, all that's going to happen is the energy-intensive industries are going overseas. And the good-paying jobs are going with them. We'll do nothing to help the environment, and we'll hurt our economy. In Louisiana, many of those $60 billion are actually in companies like fertilizers, steel, petrochemical industry. CF Industries is investing $1 billion in Iowa. They're investing $2 billion in Louisiana, in large part because of the shale revolution. Now, we used to export fertilizer. Then we got to a point where we started importing fertilizer. Now companies are spending billions of dollars to restart and expand fertilizer plants. That's good for farmers, but it's also good for our economy as well. So I think a conservative approach says you can have affordable energy, a strong economy, protect your environment, and secondly, that we shouldn't do anything that unilaterally harms our economy to the detriment compared to the countries we compete with, including China and other countries. Let me close with this. And again, like I said before, I'm more than happy. I'll stick around for folks that want to come up that didn't get a chance to ask their questions or want to take a picture, just want to visit, whatever you all want to do. Let me close with this. First of all, thank you for coming and spending this time. One of the things that gives me encouragement, this is my 4th trip to Iowa since I announced I was running for president just a few weeks ago. And I've said I'm going to every single one of the 99 counties. And we're doing multiple town halls and visiting with folks just like we're doing today. And I think that's important because it allows me not only to share my thoughts, but to hear from you. And I think that is incredibly important. I appreciate your taking the time. That shows me how seriously you take this election. National reporters ask me all the time, there are folks back home, what's it like up there? Well, I tell them it's not as humid as people think. I mean, compared to where I'm from. What I tell them is, you know what's great? The thing that's most encouraging, that gives me the most hope, is you don't have to convince people this is an important election. You don't have to give people a sense of urgency. Everybody gets it. We know that this is our best chance to turn our country around, and we better not blow it. So I'll close with this. I'm asking you to believe in me. And all the problems we've described, this is still the greatest country in the history of the world. It's worth fighting for. God bless y'all. Thank you.